What are the basic principles and substance of your teaching? I mostly taught at the Creativity Palace on the Sparrow Hills. Of the 60 years of my work in space education, the palace accounted for more than half a century. An integrated center of aviation, space and astronomy education was established there, the first in the country. It was something entirely new. Back then, my colleagues and I formulated the key principles which I believe remain valid up to date. First, space education in the broad sense should lean upon fundamental knowledge in mathematics, physics, chemistry, etc., counting biology too. It enabled us to accomplish much precisely because we embraced fundamental knowledge. The second principle is no less important. It's individualization of education. We worked with each student individually, being guided by their interests, abilities, and their possible future. Individualization helped them find their identity. The third principle emphasizes reliance on experience. It didn't take us long, just a few years, to draw a program called Man in the Universe, integrating the experience of other teams, such as the know-how of the Moscow Planetarium. The establishment of the first ever Department of Astronomy at Cosmonautics and the first club of Cosmonautics at the Palace was not happenstance. It was the year 1962, marking the beginning of the spacefaring era. At that time, astronomy hobby groups mushroomed in the Soviet Union, as did the clubs of young pilots and astronauts. We, unlike our predecessors, called our group the Club of Cosmonautics, in the broad sense of the word. It meant engineering, rocket modeling, the study of space physics and many other subjects to pursue, such as space biology and medicine, parachuting, and pilot and dynamic simulators. It was an entirely new arrangement where each could choose what they were interested in from a broad range of activities. I emphasize that they received information, taxing their mental agility and creativity, which helped them get their bearings, discover their speciality, and ultimately decide on their future career and profession. When we began our work, we always assumed that we should involve pupils of middle and senior school, not juniors. As years passed, we realized that aerospace had to be taught to juniors as well, not only from elementary school, but also to preschoolers. A special laboratory called Mysteries of the Universe was set up for juniors. You will see at least a part of it. It is the first age group. The second stage is for the middle schoolers, whose task is to obtain the broadest possible data for their subsequent evolution and more justified selection of future studies. The third, final stage is finding one's self-identity, vocational guidance, and selecting a future career. New programs have emerged in the past few decades. One, called Space Patrol, addressed the space safety on Earth. Cosmonaut number 2, German Titov, took a keen interest in the problem. He was our friend from the very beginning of our project in 1962, till the end of his life. Working with Andrian Nikolaev, cosmonaut number 3, was also interesting. He was Titov's backup, who flew into space on the Vostok 3 ship. Andrian Nikolaev was honorary president of our club for 2 decades. And when people completed their studies here at the Club of Aviation and Cosmonautics, they received their certificates signed by Andrian Nikolaev himself. Space Experiment was another program that stirred school children's interest. Annual contests are arranged for the best project of experiment aboard the International Space Station or Earth biological satellites. The program was run since 2004, thanks to the support of many scientists, not only from the university or Energia NPO, but also from the Institute of Biomedical Problems under the Russian Academy of Sciences, the Space Research Institute, and other research institutes and colleges. Thanks to their active involvement in the program, several dozen experiments authorized by school children were selected, and more than 24 of them have already been run on the ISS and BION satellites. What role does the community created by you and your colleagues play in the space education of school children in the country? The role is considerable. Most likely it's because we found ourselves in the right place at the right time. There was no National Palace of Pioneers, or Creativity Palace as it was called later, and the Moscow Palace actually took on the role of this all-union center, in particular the Department of Astronomy and Cosmonautics. Hence, we took an active part in the life of the whole country. We worked out programs and aerospace-related hobby classes for different age groups at the instructions of the Ministry of Education. They addressed various themes and were published by the ministry. We actively cooperated with grown-up stakeholders such as Astronomical and Geodesic Society under the USSR Academy of Sciences and the Znanie or Knowledge All-Union Society, where a research guidance center for propagation of astronomy and astronautics actively operated for 2 decades. It was initially headed by academic Valentin Glushko, chief designer of the Energomash power engineering company, and the Sergei Korolev Rocket and Science Corporation Energia. The council operated under his guidance, and I headed the youth section. I was chairman of the youth section bureau at the Astronomical Society under the Academy of Sciences for 2.5 decades. Thanks to those 2 organizations, their capabilities, knowledgeable personnel, the support of such celebrities as Glushko and outstanding astronomers Dmitry Martynov and director of the Astronomy Institute Yuri Boulanger, a renowned physicist, we managed to implement a whole range of projects for Soviet school children involving their teachers as well. For example, we arranged several meetings and the gathering of youth cosmonauts. They were usually held once in several years. We had 6 such gatherings to be precise, hosted by the largest observatories in Burakhan, Shemarhin, Crimea and Zelenchuk. The Zelenchuk facility boasts one of the world's largest 6M optical telescope and the Raytan 600 radio telescope. Besides, we never missed the opportunity to arrange gatherings of school children and their teachers at the Artek and Arlonok pioneer camps in the Black Sea. Seminars were held regularly. I should note that the cooperation that emerged in the early 60s continued for many decades. Many specialists became our close friends, working with us in 80s and thereafter. Please tell us about your current work. Recently, a number of books have been published thanks to our experience and cooperation with other outstanding teams and research groups. I'd say these books bring forward teaching concepts, such as a concept and program of space education. The first new generation concepts were drawn under the guidance of RAN corresponding member Oleg Alifanov, a long-standing Dean of Space System Engineering Department, Moscow Aviation Institute. In the past few years, our palace has hosted workshops and pedagogical conferences. The first was devoted to the 50th anniversary of the Department of Astronomy and Cosmonautics. The second was held a year later, and preparations are underway for the third. A decision was made at the second conference to come up with a concept and offer of an all-Russian space education program for school children. I cannot fail to mention our publishing activities. Books were published on each of our programs, detailing the method, objectives, and tasks of these expeditions. As for my input, 2 well-designed complementary books have been published in the past few years, whereas earlier publications were aids for teachers of astronomy and astronomy hobby groups. The first is titled Space, Boundless, Mysterious and Formidable. Essentially, it's an easy-to-read report on the program concerning comet and asteroid threat to Earth and its defense against it. Space, the complete guide to the stars, planets and space wanderers is my second book. It came out just 18 months ago and it's still in stock. Popularization, summary and analysis of results is what I'm doing now. Many interesting programs for the development of space education have been implemented in Moscow and across the country. However, I should note that some of them have not been carried through. First and foremost, I recall the objective we set for ourselves, which we have regrettably failed to achieve. It is the construction of the Space Center Research and Education Facility on the Pellen's premises. You can have a look at the model of the planned facility, we're showing it to you now. But despite all our efforts, we have not been able to build this center. We're happy though that the Center of Astronomy and Space Education has been set up on the basis of Astronomy and Cosmonautics department. We'd have had none of this had it not been for close cooperation and friendship with dozens, hundreds of people from various organizations. I should express deep gratitude to all those who worked with us and continued their cooperation for decades. I'd like to mention two people.